of Directors. I'm going to keep admitting people here as I talk. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. To those of you who are in the meeting space and also those of you who are tuning into the live stream, we really appreciate you making the time to be here. I want to wish a belated happy birthday to Treaty 4, which turned 146 years old yesterday. That's the treaty that under which I get the enormous privilege of joining you today and hosting this meeting from lands that were the original home of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, and also the original homeland of the Métis. This week is also significant. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm getting a lot of crackling feedback on my end, but thank you, Ravi. This week is also significant in that it was almost exactly 6 months ago that serious lockdown began in our part of the world and sent us into this crazy journey that has, I think, brought out in a lot of us a lot of the classic stages of grief, denial and bargaining and anger and all of it. And so it feels like a very good time to come together as a community and to talk about the possibilities that come with reimagining our art form. What's possible now in this world? What will be possible 6 months from today? What's possible now that maybe wasn't possible 6 months ago? And we're so happy to have guiding us through this easy peasy conversation, Nina Lee Aquino, who has so kindly agreed to be our moderator today through the Google chat. Nina is the artistic director of Factory Theatre in Toronto and is currently serving as the president of PACT. She's directed world premieres and revivals across the country and is the winner of several awards, including the Ken McDougall Award, the John Hirsch Prize, and 3 Dora Awards for Outstanding Direction. It was 3 yesterday. Have there been any more since, Nina? Should I update my database? Okay, great.
No, Ravi took one of mine.
Oh, okay. Let's save that for another room. Great, Nina. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm happy to turn things over to you from here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Everybody can hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, so hi, my name is Nina Lee Aquino. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a settler currently residing in Takaranto, colonially known as Toronto. Where I live and where I work sits on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and is under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant. Mark just said, I'm the artistic director of Factory Theatre and the current president of the board of directors at the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres. So today I am tasked to moderate this very important, urgent discussion. All the things that are happening specifically with the Saskatchewan theater community right here, right now. So what keeps you up at night? This was the question that our speakers today wanted to know. So what we did was, curate from the attendees and to answer this very question to make sure that what we're sharing with you today is relevant to you. We wanted to give you, the community, a chance to share your top of the top concerns, your worries, frustrations, and fears. And so we use these as the guiding points for our speakers to shape their conversation with you. And although these conversations are meant to be specific to the theater community here in Saskatchewan, the problems, issues, concerns we have here, for example, in Toronto, although similar, are not the same. It's also important to note that the things that you're going through, the feelings of anxiety and uncertainty, are everyone's concerns, are the Canadian theater community's concerns. Everyone is affected. And I think we can take a small comfort in knowing that we are not alone in this and that we are all connected. So that's why we are here today. We have 3 speakers from different parts of the country going in order of what we saw were the 3 biggest themes that arose from all the things that were keeping you up at night. They're here to offer a perspective that will hopefully inspire you, not just as individual artists, but as a collective force The hope is that today we jumpstart dialogue together and with each other, which then hopefully jumpstarts action plans. We are hoping that these conversations that happen today begin a ripple effect of change and transformation that can only really begin with you, each and every one of you, and together as members of this community. The speakers are here to share their knowledge, experiences, lessons learned from past mistakes. They're here to possibly ask more questions, because sometimes that is the only thing we can do and the only way we can start to think about moving forward. Starting with the queries, which then piques our curiosity, our sense of risk and exploration. It reminds us to be courageous in the face of failure. So, before we begin, here are a couple of virtual housekeeping rules. The speakers are going one after the other. This is deliberate to encourage real active listening from you, to stave off your immediate reactions and really take in the words, reflect, think through. So take down notes, quotes, lines, write down questions in your response to what you're hearing, but we want you to lean in, to lean forward. Number 2, so Google Meets rules. Some of us are not familiar with some, put your questions on the chat function. I think it's going to be on your kind of right side. It's on my right side. And then from there, I'm going to pull either names or the question themselves, and I will ask you to either unmute your mic and put your camera on, and you can actually speak directly. But if there's too much traffic, then I might just say the question out loud. We're also going to do questions from the stream side of it. Tyler is there, being the captain and kind of trying to get as much questions. And from there, we're going to kind of select a few. Obviously, we cannot go through everyone. So we're just going to go in what we see most immediate. It's the virtual world, so bear with us with some, this is going to be kind of the most techie, glitchy, possibly glitchy part of the show, but we'll make it work. What else? So the third one is like after the 3 speakers speak, there is going to be time for dialogue and all of that stuff. And finally, although your time with the speakers will be finite and limited, again, the point of all of this is to use this fleeting moment as a jumping off point for the community to have richer, deeper conversations and action planning after. So when 2:30 hits and our speakers need to leave, this virtual room will still be open for community members to stick around, to still keep chatting. And I do hope you use that time to make connections, coffee dates, to plan and scheme and move these very important conversations forward. I think that's it. So enough talking from me. I'm going to start. Allow me to introduce our first speaker, Anita Gaffney. You ready, Anita? So Anita is currently the executive director of Stratford Festival and has been since 2012. Anita has guided the festival to financial stability and has supported the introduction of numerous festival initiatives, including the HD film series, the Stratford Direct bus service, the forum, and the laboratory. Anita is also an active member of the Stratford community. She is the past chair of the City of Stratford's Economic Development Agency, the Stratford Public Library, and served as the campaign chair of the United Way Perth Huron. Anita was named one of Canada's most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network in 2018 and has received an honorary doctorate from Western University and a Business Excellence Award for Personal Achievement from the Stratford and District Chamber of Commerce. So Anita, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm in Stratford, Ontario today. I honor the resilience of the original guardians of this land and its waterways, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Neutrals, and the many other peoples recorded and unrecorded who have shared and cared for this land. As an organization and a company of artists, we at the Stratford Festival are in the process of learning how we can be better treaty partners. I want to start by one of the things that I am doing through this period is I'm putting together a list of pandemic wins. The things that have been positive coming out of the pandemic. And it's quite a long list, actually. And one of the really fantastic things is that I've had so much opportunity to be connected with my colleagues in the industry. Right from the beginning, there's been panicked conference calls across the country as we all had the bottom fall out. And this is a continuation. I'm very grateful to Yvette for reaching out to me and inviting me to speak to you. And I am not an oracle. I do not have all the answers. And I hope that I learn as much today as you all learn. All I can tell you is about my experience at the Stratford Festival. Obviously, this is a moment I'm going to say some things that are like blatantly obvious. This is a time of enormous upheaval for our industry. Gathering is absolutely essential to everything we do, from rehearsals to gathering around a bar pre-show to sitting in the audience. And this public health crisis has just blown that all to heck. We're 6 months into this extended intermission, and like all of you, the sort of things that I had to deal with in the beginning was I felt like a firefighter. It was all emergency activities. We were canceling performances. We were ending contracts. We were refunding tickets. We were negotiating with our bank. We were negotiating with suppliers. We were speaking to our community and the tourism industry that surrounds us to let them know what was happening. We've had conversations about racism and about the pain that has been provoked as a result. And we've drawn inspiration, I think, from the of our artists and loyalty of our patrons. I'm just going to check in. Ravi, are you okay?
I just came back. Yeah, my
Okay.
thing. Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. So that it's been a lot of stuff that are not the things I would say to you were the most enjoyable parts of my job, and it has taken up all of my job and all of this emergency activity that's been happening. Like all of you, probably, I thought this was temporary, and my thinking in those beginning times was, okay, this will be weeks or months or even a year, and we'll get through the other side of this, and this is just something we're managing through. But now it's clear that the impact of this is going to impact the Stratford Festival for 5 or 10 years. I think it will take a few years to get back to the artistic activity, the kind of audience numbers that we have seen, the financial stability. It's going to take a long time. We're anticipating a loss of about $10 million on our season this year. We were in the position of, we had not yet delivered any of our performances in 2020, so we had spent a lot of money getting ready and then not able to deliver, and then everything fell apart. So it's a challenging place that we're in right now, as we all are. And now we're focused on how do we survive the next few months, and how do we get started again for us, which would be next year for the Stratford Festival. One thing I just want to acknowledge is that this is very disorienting. The things that I love about my job is the miracle of creation. I like to enable creation. That's what turns me on. It's what lights my fire. It's, I want to, I get such a thrill out of seeing a production come together, to hearing what an artist wants to achieve with a production, seeing it happen, seeing an audience react to it, and to not have that. And I just say that because I don't think we should be underestimating the kind of loss of purpose that we're probably all feeling. And I think it's good to articulate it. So I'm taking the long view in that I can't produce something, next week, but I am looking to what we can produce next year and in the forthcoming years, and laying the foundation for producing in the future. So how are we using this time right now? We're very engaged in conversations about anti-racism, and I think that this extended intermission has been a real gift to the festival in that regard. I think it has enabled us to have these conversations. It started with us in doing a couple of panel discussions in the spring, where we invited our artists to talk about their experiences at the festival and in the broader community. And we had a very candid conversation at that time, and it has taken us to a place of continued conversation, of recognizing where we're falling short. We've put together an anti-racism committee to help us to identify the things that we can identify where there are failings for the festival, and how we can grow and develop and go forward. At the same time, we're putting together an inclusivity plan. And so I'm very grateful for the burden that our artists have taken in having this conversation, because I know it's painful to have these conversations. I'm very committed to creating a workplace that is a place where people can do their very best work. It supports my desire to be an enabler of creation, and I want people to be in an environment that they can do that in. And that's going to take some real heavy lifting. So we're spending lots of our energy and focus to listening and understanding and taking action. At the same time, we're thinking about what the model for the organization looks like for the next few years. So we don't have ticket sales revenue this year. We have donation revenue and a little bit of government funding. So we're thinking through what the financial model looks like for the next few years and trying to shape our plans to fit with that available resource. I've put together financial plans for a few years, and even if they don't entirely come to fruition, and I don't have any meat on those plans, it's just kind of, if I have a loss of 10 million this year, we'll probably have a loss again next year because we can't get the numbers of people. What does the third and fourth and fifth year look like? Just so I can start to really to give a foundation to my view that this is a long-term issue that we're dealing with right now, and how do I get us out of this and through it. Something else we've done is stayed really close to our patrons. So we're communicating with them regularly, and trying not to beg them for money every time that we communicate with them, but to give them some value of information from us. And we have cultivated a digital presence, and we've been really fortunate that we have a catalog of films that we were able to share with people. But actually, I found some of the most meaningful things we've done online has been viewing parties and panel discussions where we've invited our patrons to be a part of it. It helps them to feel some connection. Even in a panel discussion, they'll remember a production that they've seen before, or will be introduced to new audience members that are from very far afield and have stumbled across something on YouTube, and they're contributing to the viewing party and talking about, what is this place? And I've never seen this kind of work before, and I can't wait to see these artists in person. So we've been working hard to stay close to our patrons, and cultivating a digital presence has been a part of that. As we look to reopen, we're very much driven by conditions that are safe for reopening. So thinking about distancing and how we load people and unload the theater, how long the shows are. And I feel that doing all of those things is important. Communicating them is probably even more important. I think people want reassurance that it's going to be, you've thought of everything and it's going to be safe. And I think people are looking for some precision. You know, they want to know that there's a system in place for managing crowds and moving people around. So we're applying our minds to that. The other thing that has been challenging as well is thinking about flexibility. You know, we set a season, we announce it really far in advance, we hire all the artists. It has a very long horizon, and we're having to think about doing this over a much shorter horizon. So we wouldn't be announcing our season until next year, and we may be announcing it in tranches. As I see CanStage, I just noticed that they were doing that as well. So just announcing a couple of months at a time, so that you have the flexibility to ramp up and ramp down. We're looking at installing a canopy installation outside of the festival theater so that it would be entirely open and it's just a covering over the audience and the stage, to give us the flexibility to be able to continue performing even if there are issues with gathering inside. So we're assessing the possibility of that for next season. There had been a question about new audiences, and I think that there's a real opportunity around new audiences. We're going to be looking at patrons coming from closer to our community, and I think that means that we can be looking deeper into the audience possibility within our catchment. I think there's a lot of opportunity for families and for young people to be discovering what we do. And I don't know if any of you have had the chance to see any theater in the last few months. I saw a one-person show with Roy Lewis. It was in a park in Stratford, and it was so moving to have a communal experience again and even though it was just 30 other people and we were all distanced from each other, but to hear the poetry of Roy's haikus, to hear the reaction of the audience, to be vulnerable with an artist again and to go with them with their story. This is all to say, I think people are going to crave getting back into the theaters again and to have that experience. So I am really hopeful that the audiences are going to be there when we are ready and it's safe for us to be putting on productions again. And I also think people are really adventurous. And so I think we shouldn't be limited to thinking about the most popular things as we think about reopening. I think people are just going to want to get into a communal experience again and to enjoy theater. So I think there's real opportunities for new audiences. So I'm going to wrap it up there. That was probably more than 6 minutes.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Anita. So we're going to move on to Camilla, who's next. So Camilla Holland is the current executive director of the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre. But before she was at MTC, Camilla was the general manager at Tarragon Theatre and has worked for a wide variety of professional theatres across Toronto, including large institutions, theater for young audiences, new play developers, and creation-based companies. Camilla has also produced the Summer Works Theatre Festival and has also worked in other various kind of theater streams like education and outreach, marketing and fundraising, production, and touring. Camilla is currently on the board of the Manitobans for the Arts, the National Theatre School, and the Advisory Council for TRG Arts. She won the Canada Council for the Arts John Hobday Award and the Mallory Gilbert Leadership Award. So, platform's yours, Camilla.
Sorry, the mute button keeps disappearing on me.
Same here. That's
I'm like, where is it? Thank you so much. And thank you. Thanks for leading us off right, Nina. It was beautiful intro in general. And thanks to my colleagues, Anita. I can't wait to hear from Ravi. So I'm honored today to participate from Winnipeg. The heart of our city is the juncture of the Assiniboine and Red Rivers, a place where people have gathered to share stories for thousands of years. Winnipeg is on Treaty 1 land, the traditional territory of the Innu, Anishinaabe, and Dakota peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And I've had the privilege to live here under the treaties for 9 seasons. I'm going to try today to draw together 4 themes: sustainability, empathy, burnout, and boards. I want to reassure you, like Anita, I'm not an oracle. I don't have any answers, but I want to give you a sense of where I'm at on the map of this brave new world and to reassure you that I too feel quite lost. We are faced with these unprecedented challenges and opportunities with what Donna Walker-Kuhn calls the twin pandemics, COVID-19 and a reckoning with the systemic racism in our society and in our institutions. And as leaders, we owe it to our organizations to navigate and resist the urge to hibernate. We have to keep our eye on the horizon and use the guiding principles of your mission, mandate, values, and vision as the compass. This isn't an outlying storm. We are on a new journey across a wide ocean, and we need to be ready for wave after wave. Now is the moment to focus your energy on becoming nimble. And to be clear, that's really hard for large organizations. Becoming nimble includes responsiveness, partnerships, flexibility. It's how fast, to Anita's point, you can rethink your plans with new information. Funders and boards want a single budget crafted 6 or 12 or 18 months in advance that they can measure success against, and we're going to have to disappoint that. We may have to move to planning in quartiles or sprints to be resilient. This is going to affect every aspect of our organizations: staff models, artist commitments, planning cycles, union agreements, cash flow. It's all about to be upended. What will outlast this storm is the creativity of artists, the impulse to gather, and the value of inspiration and experience. And for what it's worth, I don't think subscriptions are dead. There will be people who want to make an active commitment to our art form who don't make a living in our art form. Live audiences will come back. They're just going to take a while. And for us to survive their slow return arc will take patience and financial reserves and calculated risks. Sustainability is sometimes defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs. So it's not enough to sustain your organization through these tough times. Your job right now is to ensure your organization will be there to meet the somewhat unknown needs of artists and administrators 3, 6, 9 generations from now. So in these recovery years, the spirit I'm holding close is, and I tend to chant this to myself at 3 a.m., smaller is better than gone. I was talking with a colleague about empathy, and more specifically, what I see in our community as a bit of a thinning of empathy. And she pointed me to Brené Brown's concept of the assumption of positive intent. Essentially, this recognizes that the person you are dealing with, colleague, artist, collaborator, competitor, they are doing the best they can. It's an almost radical thought. Let's assume that everyone is doing the best they can. If we could bring that spirit of generosity to our decisions, to our conversations, I believe progress and understanding would be faster and deeper. So in the midst of not doing work, the work that we love to do in terms of putting artists and audiences together, we are trying to answer hard questions about how we do the work. Could we rethink our relationship with the art form through an empathy lens? Safe and respectful workplaces that recognize the talent and treasure that each person brings, but also maybe we could disrupt the notion that we make the best art in 6 consecutive days of 10 out of 12s. The CTA has included alternative rehearsal models for years, and nobody really uses them. And I know why. The hamster wheel is spinning too fast and there's not enough money. Well, spoiler alert, the wheel is stalled and there's never going to be enough money. But perhaps we could use what we have to try and engineer a healthier way to create art. I'm not naive. I know this will take time and put other things under pressure, but surely this great intermission should allow us to ask questions that in a traditional timeline would be anathema. Can we build empathy into our business models? And what would that mean for the relationships we have with artists? And while we're talking about tough questions and empathy, let's recognize that burnout is real and has real consequences. When we're stressed, we don't make good decisions. We lean into fight or flight, and we sure as heck don't start from a place of assuming everyone is doing their best. I loved what Anita said about seeing a live play. I so crave that. Elizabeth Gilbert has a great video about the difference between a hobby, a job, a career, and a vocation. So definitely Google it. For most people who work in this sector, theater is all four. It's our hobby, our job, our career, and our vocation. And most of us fill those buckets with theater, right? Making, watching, contributing, volunteering, and the gap that has been left in its absence is hard to fill with sourdough bread and Tiger King. Dear colleagues, you can't do it all. And I'll tell you a secret, you never could. We always had things on the back burners, guilty files we ignored. Today, you have to be smart about your focus and pick the critical areas where your actions will make a material and much needed difference now and in the future. I encourage everybody to create a stop doing list and post it where you will be held accountable to it. And ask your team if you have one for help, and ask your board to support your dedication to a few priorities. And if there are more than 5, you have to prioritize your priorities. There are still the same number of hours in the day as pre-COVID. I have to advise everybody to Google the Pomodoro method. It's a very smart way to make sure that you dedicate the right amount of time to a project and you put down your metaphorical pencil when it's done, because good enough on some things might have to be good enough right now. I'm usually an optimistic person, but when it comes to COVID-19, I am a serious Debbie Downer and focusing on the long game and anticipating financially stressful times for 5 seasons. We need to pace ourselves as leaders and humans. To all the people on this call, that 3 a.m. feeling that you're not capable of leading through this, that you didn't sign up for this, I don't know anyone who isn't losing sleep. But this is the job now, to get your company through and to be better the other side. Better resilient, better reflective, better responsive to the community you serve. And as we navigate in our tiny or oversized rowboats, be assured there are others around. Ideally, board members are providing counsel and support, representing our stakeholders and keeping us true to the compass of the mission and mandate. Remember, as the uppercase B board, they collectively act to govern the organization, but as lowercase b board members, they individually act to support the organization. Board members have formal, fiduciary, legal responsibility, but they're human. And they too might be feeling that this wasn't covered in their board orientation manual. Governance through a global pandemic is such an emerging trend, there aren't even books written about it or resources or best practices to follow. The best boards have a strong idea of what is in their purview and clear and consistent communication with their leadership team. Noses in, fingers out, but it's a tricky balance and very much dependent on the personalities at play. Staff need to help the board make necessary decisions on a realistic timeline. You have to help them navigate, not hibernate. And you have to remember they're experts in their own fields, but not necessarily our sector. You have that expertise. And I have great faith that the Saskatchewan theatre community will not just survive the twin pandemics, but thrive through and beyond them. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla. Ravi, are you there? Because I can't see you anymore. Oh no. Please don't make me do a song and dance number.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. We can't
Okay,
see
I've got
you,
2
though.
things going on. You can't see me? My camera's on.
Oh. Okay. I'm just going to
It's sure
trust
you
it.
don't know how to use Google Meet.
I don't know. Okay, so I'm just going to trust that you're there and that you hear me. All right, so you're up next, Ravi Jain. So Ravi is the founding artistic director of Why Not Theatre. He is a multi-award winning theater artist that has made politically bold and accessible theater experiences in small indie productions and large theaters. He's been shortlisted for the Seminovich Prize twice, has won the Ken McDougall Award, the Pauline McGibbon Award, and the Canada Council John Hirsch Prize for directing. My good friend Ravi Jain, here you go. Go for it, bud.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks so much to everybody for having me as part of this amazing group of people. Thanks, Anita and Camilla. Anita, I'm sorry I was dipping in and out because of damn internet, but I caught some of what you said. So thank you to both of what you said. And Nina, thanks so much for your intro. You basically stole my intro. It's all good. But I'll just share and reiterate that I'm calling in from Toronto, which is the traditional land of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm really grateful to be here. Just want to echo, don't have all the answers, just have a perspective. And really today, I'm going to try to answer some of your questions that we received. And I'm going to read them to you so that we're all on the same page. And the thing that I'm going to focus on, hopefully, is to share, why not theater success in partnering with large and small institutions, and just our way of working in terms of challenging leadership models to maybe inspire you to think about ways that you can all work within the community in a more mutually beneficial, harmonious way. And this is something I've been advocating for many years, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the questions that I'm going to focus on that I received, and again, I just want to share these so that they resonate with everyone. The first one is, I'm concerned that COVID will take small players down, and that is where innovation usually starts. So small companies getting wiped out, and they're the innovative ones. Question 2, what will happen to the large players? What will theater look like in a year or two when the big regionals are the only ones left to lead? I'm afraid they're not equipped to be good leaders. So challenging leadership at the institution, what role do they play if they're the only ones left? How do we balance, question 3, how do we balance the need to be able to hold leaders accountable with the desire to have a more diffuse artistic leadership model? So accountability and different models of leadership. And then lastly, my question would be around how larger institutions might practically institute change when currently they have staff and or faculty who are white. What steps can be taken to encourage BIPOC artists and scholars to come to Regina/Saskatchewan to take up positions here? So a lot of questions around, what role that the major institution plays in the ecology, what role the small institution plays in the ecology, and what leadership looks like in terms of race, and also looks like in action, and what the relationship is between big and small. So I'm going to be bold here and try to share a PowerPoint just to introduce a couple of visual ideas. Tell me if that worked. Can you, hold on, share it. Can you see my screen? I need someone to vocalize because I can't see you anymore. I'm hoping you can.
Yep, now I can.
Can you? Super. Okay. So I'm not going to go to full screen because that'll screw us all up. But so just some background. Why Not Theater is a company I founded 13 years ago after living abroad in Toronto and coming back to Toronto, Canada. We are an independent theater company, non-venued, and we basically do 3 things. The first thing we do is we make and tour new work. And that work tends to challenge the status quo of what stories are being told and who gets to tell them. The second thing we do is we share our resources to support the touring and development of other artists. This tends to be a BIPOC focus. And what we're doing is the more resource we accumulate, we feel it's our responsibility to support the local community and provide access to the arts and the support for artists to make the kind of work that we get to make and tour it around the world. And the third thing we do is we provoke systems change in the ecology. And we are trying to remove the barriers of access to participation in the arts for both artists and audiences. So this is about, changing models, real systems change, anything from producing models to support emerging artists, which I'll talk about the Riser project, innovating with ticketing prices so that more people can have access to the arts without affecting the bottom line, and changing systems to, again, address the systemic racism that we all now know exists and finding ways to challenge and change that. So we're unique in that in a short 13 years, we've grown dramatically. We've executed a ton of projects. We've worked in very creative ways. And a big part of that is because of a recent injection of funds from Canada Council in 2016 when they changed the funding stream that affected our country and a lot of arts organizations and allowed us to grow. And pre-COVID, we were projecting a $2 million budget, which is extremely rare for a non-venued institution. Now, yes, the Canada Council played a huge role in that, but a major kind of way that we were able to grow over the 13 years and really defy the odds of growth in the art sector has been our understanding of this graph. So I hope everybody can see it. So basically on the left, this is how funding works at all levels in Canada with regards to government funding. And what you have on the left is you have the age of companies. So the higher up on the pyramid on the left that you go, the older company they are. So 25 years plus is at the top of the pyramid, and 5 years or less is at the base of the pyramid. And you can see there are fewer older companies, and there are a lot more younger companies at the base of the pyramid. When you go to the right, you see the percentage of funding that is allocated to companies. And you'll see across the board, the biggest volume of funding is reserved for the fewest, oldest companies. And as you go down, where there is the widest base of need, there is the lowest amount of resource. And so I'm just going to come back to you. So that is a really important graph to understand in terms of, can you see me now? Stop presenting. I'm coming back to you. I'm coming back to you. You can probably not see me. You can hear me? Because my internet went down. Hello? Am I gone completely?
We can hear you.
No, you're not, Ravi.
Okay, you can hear me.
But you're still in presenting
Great.
mode.
Okay, it should probably drop out because my internet checked out again. Okay, so that graph, everybody I'm hoping saw that graph, and it's really important to understand that graph because every funder will say there's no new money. So early on in my career, when I came to Canada to start this company, I said, okay, if there's no new money, let's think about how old money is spent. And let's think about what role the people with money need to play to support the entire ecology that is the theater community. And let's challenge how we think about what this relationship is, because traditionally we're working in silos and the independent companies have been created to exist outside of the institution. And for the most part, they were created because the institution wasn't presenting their work. So traditionally, those companies tended to be the BIPOC artists, or they tend to be the artists doing the weird work. And it isn't until they're deemed commercially viable that the institution pulls them in. So very early on in my development with the company, I was always partnering with large organizations. And the biggest kind of example I can give you of a very successful big-small relationship was with actually Camilla Holland, who's on this call, and the creation of a show that I made called A Brimful of Asha, which is a show that I made with my mother that for 9 years has toured around the world and has generated a substantial amount of cash for the company. We call it Brimful of Kasha. And it was a commercial success, and Why Not was able to profit from it 100%. And the relationship was that Tarragon paid for the development of the work. They paid entirely for the production. They obviously received the box office. We received a percentage of the box office. And then we kept the production, and we were able to tour for 9 years and generate our own money from the project. So we owned the work. Tarragon didn't steal it. Tarragon didn't own it. Tarragon wasn't the only one to profit from it. So we could take those resources and actually build and grow the company. And as we were doing that, we were taking the money we were making and sharing it with other artists and basically playing the role that Tarragon was playing for us. So when we think about when we accumulate resources, how do we think about what our responsibility is to support and invest in communities and artists around us? Another example is with Nina Lee Aquino. So I, as a freelance director, was hired to direct Saltwater Moon. I directed it at Factory Theater. It was a very successful production. And as a result of a lot of my touring relationships, a lot of people reached out and they wanted to tour the show. Factory didn't have an infrastructure to tour the show. And with Nina's permission, we negotiated a 50-50 split on the production. And therefore, why not take this production that, again, it did not pay for, but the artistic leadership was involved in the creation of it. And we were able to tour this show for 2 years across the country. And we were able to split the profits so that Factory received extra revenue from funds that they wouldn't have had. And Why Not was able to benefit think about that, right? The company had nothing to do with the show other than the artistic leader, but because we had a skill that the institution didn't have, rather than being, what a lot of artistic directors do is, well, no, if it's not ours, we're not going to let someone do it. And Nina embraced that reality that we had something that the institution couldn't do. And in that partnership, we both benefited. Also, the artists in the production got to get paid. They got to get further and develop the work. So again, and I'm not saying it was easy. We had to work through the contract, but it's really about understanding what is the institution's role and what is the independent theater company's role. Quickly, I'll just speak about 2 more partnerships. One is with the Shaw Festival. We were supposed to premiere pre-COVID this summer a massive production of an adaptation of the Mahabharata. So we are the first independent company to have ever in Shaw Festival's history partnered to create a new work. This is significant because, again, we are the one with the project. We are the one with the creative process. We know how to make work a certain way that the institution does not know how to do. We can access a community in a certain way. We know how to make the work in a certain way. So the question is, how do we partner together? What does the institution have what do each of us have that the other doesn't? And how do we work together? And fundamentally for Shaw, not only did they have the amazing resource of money and housing and space for us to develop the work over a long period of time, they also had, technical abilities that we did not have. And within that process, we as a company were able to grow significantly. So again, the investment impacts us, we grow. And then as we grow, as I mentioned in our mandate and our mission, we are sharing and supporting other artists to grow and stretch in the same way. So the trickle down is vital to think about how we as an ecology function together. And the leadership of most major institutions across the country, and I've met most of them, is to not do that. And the problem of ownership and the reality, and I'll share, with Shaw Festival, it's not easy. It doesn't happen often because you have to teach each other how to behave. You have to have honest conversations about values. You have to have honest conversations about timelines and needs. And flat out, Canadians are really, we're challenged with that. We're too polite. And oftentimes people are afraid to say the difficult thing for fear of risking the relationship. And I mean, I can speak more about processes and what are ways to do that. So it's possible in the questions I shared at the beginning, it's even more vital at this moment that the people with the most money, the institutions with the most money in your community, start to think about their relationship with the independent community in a more holistic way as investors of work and investors in the community to, again, fill the gap that you don't have. So be it BIPOC artists and BIPOC relationships with communities, be it an innovative approach or a way of process of working, be it a process of engaging those new audiences that Anita is talking about. The challenge in the past, or always, is the institution feels, as Camilla said, that you have to do everything. And the reality is that so many independent institutions, or independent organizations, are so small that necessity has been the mother of invention. And so how do we think about, in essence, the intellectual property of those organizations and invest in order to be able to better the institution and really, really fundamentally think about the ecology as a whole. So what I really want to emphasize, it's about really interrogating what is your role? What resource do you have and how do you share it for the greater good? And it's the thing that surprises me about the arts, which apparently has a left-leaning bent, but truly enacts a kind of right-wing conservative mentality because also of a scarcity model that we exist in. And a fundamental approach for us is when you share small pots of resource, you end up with something quite big and quite substantial. And I'll just close off with another final example to share with you, which I won't share the screen, but I can talk about this more at greater length, and I have articles that I can share about this, is our Riser project, which is a collaborative producing model that we invented about 6 years ago now. And what it does is basically brings a community of people together to share resources to support the development of work from 4 emerging artists. So 4 is an arbitrary number right now. Right now it could scale bigger or scale smaller, but right now the sweet spot is 4. And basically what we do is we take 4 sets of emerging artists and we run their shows in rep over the period of 5 weeks. 2 shows run for 2.5 weeks, 2 shows run for 2.5 weeks. It's basically taking the best of a festival model, but running it outside of the festival period. And what's good about that is you're sharing resources like lighting designers, space costs, marketing costs, you're sharing audiences. And what we do is we bring the people with money. So I was saying, rather than looking at how, if there's no new money, let's look at how old money is spent. What we do is we bring the community of senior partners together. So those are any company that have any kind of operating funds. And you all have them in your community, whether they're 5 to 10 or 2 even. They're not necessarily the institution, but they have operating funds. And we bring them all together and we say, look, you guys, you have funds. What small amounts of resource can you give to support artists? For example, I have space. For example, I have $2,000 bucks. For example, I have a projector you can have and use for free. Our artistic director can offer dramaturgy support to those artists if they need. And what we're doing is we're creating a community of people to support the artistic risks of those artists. And we can get into the details of the budget, but for those institutions, for a significantly lower cost than what they would do for a show, they can not only present 4 new pieces of work, they also are investing in their community and saving money all around. Again, I can get into the numbers if we have more time, and I can offline this conversation for other people if they want. But a huge success in the model, because we're bringing everyone together, is that 70% of the shows have gone on to have a second life. And you all know this in Canadian theater, that shows, new work only gets 1 shot and then it's done. So to have a second life means that those senior companies, those companies with money, they can pick up those shows and put them in their season. The theaters can pick up those shows and put them in their seasons. And so what we're again creating is a ecology where we as a community are saying, look, no one person has to be the owner of this work, but we can all start to think about how we can share this work, how we can find the right audience and the right platform to present this work. And that, to be cheesy, high tides float all boats. And so on a practical level, I think the way an actionable thing that you all can do is just ask the question, like, what role should the institution play in this moment for the ecology as a whole? What role should the independent artist with operating funds play in this ecology? What role does the freelance artist need to play in this ecology? And how can we be in concert to identify what resources and powers each of us have in an honest and authentic way, and see where we can partner up to help each other out? Lastly, I'll say to, the institution, as Anita mentioned, and Camilla mentioned, we don't know when we're getting back to the sizes of audiences that those institutions can function at. And again, the institution can be humble to recognize that the independent company has been working small for a long time, and that actually to change your thinking to working small requires time and requires guidance and expertise that I would argue that the independent ecology or your senior companies, whatever you want to call them, you have. So in closing, I would say, how do you identify each other's roles? How do you identify the resources that you have? And how do you figure out the ways to share them immediately and think about your ecology as a whole rather than building one audience for one venue and pulling artists out of the community to just serve the institution? I think that's my time.
Thanks, Ravi. Thank you. All right, so we've come to the portion where our lovely speakers, our panelists, are now able to kind of, start conversations with you guys, so like question and answer and all of that stuff. So I've got one to start us off. Already a question popped up in the live stream side, but feel free to either put your question in this room on the chat, and I'll either call your name out so that you can actually just say the question in person or, virtually, or I can just read the question out loud. But, while people are kind of just gathering their last minute thoughts to kind of the what has been said so far in the last, 30 minutes or so, I'm going to start us off. And any one of you, Kamala, Anita, or Ravi, can answer this question. So how are you giving or planning on giving power to the artists in the new way of working you are envisioning? So I'll repeat the question. How are you giving or planning on giving power to the artists in the new way of working you are envisioning?
It's a great question. I mean, I feel like what Ravi was talking about really demonstrates a really clear path forward. I think that within institutions, I'm just going to talk about MTC framework. There tends to be a sort of artistic voice, right, led by the artistic director. We have a new artistic director who has watched her imagined beautiful first season collapse under the weight of COVID. But I think that what we are learning in this time is that we may need to look at even how products are created in a different way and trying to centralize the artist's voice in that way. So I don't have a very specific example because I feel like we are at the beginning of this learning curve. But, we've talked exactly about the model that that companies in Toronto have used for years around kind of the co-partnerships, the associations with, that model has been under scrutiny depending on how it's implemented. But when it's fulsome, and that's really Nightwood's path to production, and that's where Kelly came from before MTC. It is about building authentic partnerships with people bringing different assets to the table and recognizing those assets, and then really empowering the artists to take the project beyond its time necessarily in a subscription space. So I would say that's really, part of our forward looking. I would also say that we're really trying to learn from our artists right now when it comes to the reality of what it's been to work in our venues. And so to Anita's point about understanding the spaces we've created, where those have not been safe and respectful spaces for all. And so it's a really opportune moment to listen and to learn. And I think that most theater companies are trying to do that from the communities we serve right now, and to grow out of it, to make actionable commitments to equity, diversity, inclusion, but also to ensuring that when people come back, they are coming to changed organizations, to organizations who have, for lack of a better word, awoken to what was really painfully obvious to some people for a long time.
Great. Thank you. We have a question from Joel Birnbaum. Do you want to actually show yourself, Joel, so you can ask the question yourself? Where are you? There you go. Unmute. There.
I believe that was my mic is not working.
Okay, awesome. So I will just, and you can lip sync to when I read your question. So, Joel's question is about connecting to new audiences. Do you have any specific ideas or plans about how you will connect with people who did not come to the theater before COVID times? So, this can be either Anita or Ravi.
I'll jump in. Thanks. Joel, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for new audiences. I think the kind of work we'll be doing is different. It's just going to be naturally smaller work, shorter work, and a great variety, I think, of different sort of projects that we're looking at. So I think the work is going to drive the audience. I think that for all of us, we're not going to travel far afield, right? We're all going to be sticking around our communities for the next year or two. So I think that there's deep opportunity within our communities, and really thinking about who is in your area, what sort of cultural activity do they partake in? Is there a digital way to get in touch with them? And that's something that we're able to do is to find people digitally and to start to connect with them so they become acquainted with our work. But I think just really getting close to home and granular about who is around you, and shaping the programming to draw those people, and probably opportunities to get in front of those people too, because again, we're probably not using our big venues. We're going to have to be thinking of different ways of doing performances in public squares and in public spaces. So that's going to naturally introduce us to new audiences.
Can I chime in quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I sort of want to answer both questions. In terms of artists, and it all sort of ties in together. We're focusing and then trying to empower particularly BIPOC artists through some mentorship programs and like direct targeting specific artists to get them access to institutions and support to develop work in this time, and just keep essentially, strengthen up so that when we do come back, we can be more voices at the table, more voices that are artistically strong, supported, and able to aid in the recovery. And I really believe that the arts is going to play an essential role in the recovery. And, for us, we're trying to ensure that, the arts can reflect a fuller spectrum. And that ties me into your question around new audiences. And I think that the question, a lot of people have, this is not a new question pre-COVID or post-COVID. It's still the same question around new audiences. And I think the thing I tell a lot of people that, for me, I think it's the wrong question, because it's the wrong question because I think the question is more about what is your relevance? How can you identify the needs of your audience and why they need to come and experience this thing called theater that you will deliver to them? And for me, that is the crucial thing that we need to ask. And the answer doesn't have to be, well, we're going to be a political force. If that's what you want to do, that's great. If you just want to entertain people with musicals, that's also great too. As long as you have actually identified what relevance and, again, what role you play in the offering to the audience, that relationship will become clear and you'll be able to communicate in a way that is on their terms and understanding the needs, to Anita's point, of the people around you. And I think that's a big mistake that theaters tend to make, is there's this assumption that theater is important, that theater, people need to see it. I don't think so. I think that we have to understand what this conversation is with the audience and what the relevance is. And for me, the more perspectives that we bring to the table, the better chance we'll have at broadening the swath of our relevance.
Great. Thanks, Ravs. We have a question from Mary Blackstone. Mary, I see you. Do you want to just ask the question?
Sure. I'll read and interpolate because I found that there's a length limit here and it's kind of a long question. But as we consider the issue of power sharing, There has been a history in Canada of new theatre work moving from larger population centres to smaller centres. There is a more challenging history with respect to new work which originates in smaller centres being taken up and presented in larger centres. This issue is really moving on from where Ravi was speaking last there. So for Saskatchewan, this is a critical issue for power sharing. And perhaps in the context of COVID and the increased attention to virtual presence, that may help. But I wonder if the panelists have any suggestions on how this situation can change going forward from COVID, because it's going to be even more critical than it was before.
Ravi Jain, go for it.
I think it will help to challenge the assumption that theater needs to happen in the venue that is presenting it. So for example, the Globe Theatre, I'll just use it arbitrarily because that's a theater in Saskatchewan. The Globe Theatre could present, so to your point, rather than pulling the show out of the small community and bringing it to the big city to be on the big stage, why couldn't the Globe Theatre present the show in the community that it was founded in? And invest again in that community and develop a Globe audience in that local community. And again, just think beyond the walls of the physical location and really realize again, its role as someone with resource can be far more creative than just limited to the idea that it needs to be the owner and presenter of work that happens in their building.
Any other answers from Anita or Camilla?
So one of the things that MTC is fortunate to do is a regional tour, right? So we put a show on the road, and one of the things that COVID so we have a show in 24 communities around the province, and in COVID times, we're trying to think about what that community relationship looks like, because we can't necessarily go into the gymnatoriums in the schools that we're used to. So we're trying to be really smart about taking work into non-traditional venues, what we would call non-traditional venues, but are in fact really traditional venues, like, churches or curling rinks, or I'm not sure we're going to put up a tent because it's February in northern Manitoba, but, maybe a heated tent. I don't know. I think that the porousness between rural and urban in the prairies it's an extraordinary barrier to somebody who's not from here. Like, I can't tell you how many people in Winnipeg say to me, "Oh, well, it wouldn't play in Brandon." I'm like, it's just down the road. Are we sure? So I think with new leadership comes great people, great new questions. Like, and I look to the number of new but also established leaders in your community and say, maybe this is a moment to disrupt our assumptions about what will transfer beyond your periphery, or what will actually be relevant beyond that. I don't think that's enormously helpful, but I believe that some of that porousness is going to change, because I think that one of the things I suspect that Winnipeggers right now are far more interested in what's happening in the rest of Manitoba than they historically have been. And that's because we're not leaving the province very much. So we care a little bit more about what is going to happen nearby.
No. Yeah, great. You're back. We have speaking of porousness, we do have a question from the stream side. Thoughts about streaming as a medium going forward, both reaching audiences and financial sustainability?
I'll start with this one and then invite anyone else to jump in. I think streaming is important. When I think about the season next year for Stratford, I'm thinking about how many people are going to get under that tent or in that space or in that park, like whatever the space, I'm thinking about the number of people who come. And then I'm thinking as another tangible audience are those who are going to join us through a streamed performance. How that's delivered, I don't know yet. And lots of other organizations are doing it, and we'll figure it out. But I think it's going to be an important part of building audiences for the next 5 to 10 years. I would envision charging people for those streamed performances in the same way that you charge for somebody to sit in under the tent and in your venue. We are launching a subscription service in the beginning of October. So we're basically putting all of our stuff behind a paywall. We have a catalog of films, but we're also creating a whole bunch of new content that is original digital content. That's what it was made for. And then as we go into our season next year, we're going to shift into streaming some of our performances from Stratford and charging for those. For us, I know Netflix has figured this out, but for an arts organization, this is entirely new territory, and I really don't know if there's any money in it. I feel like streaming is a viable way to get in front of people, and we have to figure, I mean, you guys, we need to pay our artists, our playwrights, our actors, and in order to do that, people have to pay for the digital content. So we're trying this, and hopefully there's some learning that'll help everybody to figure out how to monetize digital content.
Yeah, I might just mention, so Tarragon Theatre has launched a radio subscription, a radio series this year to sort of 18 plays. I'm curious to see how sort of the first 3 or 4 of those perform in terms of revenue. The cynic in me would say that there's so much good stuff for free, that it's going to be very complicated for companies without the brand quality and reach of a Stratford Festival to actually monetize in a meaningful way. I think if anybody can do it, it's Stratford. I'm concerned that it's going to be out of reach for even us to think about it in a revenue generating way. Relevance, yes. Engagement, yes. Porousness and storytelling and enlightening and inspiring and all of that, yes. Revenue stream, I'm not convinced, but I'm so thrilled to be surprised by people's ability and interest to pay. And I would say that is a question you can ask. I was going to say this is a question you can ask your audiences today, right? Like, do not underestimate that you have data today about your audiences, which is you could ask them, you could say to them, if we put stuff online, would you pay for it? Would you pay 30%, 40%, 50% of what you would pay to buy a ticket? It's a piece of information that might be really helpful.
Ravi?
Yeah, I will just share on our end, a lot of people have been asking for us to stream our work, theaters in particular, and presenters. The major challenge has been getting the appropriate fee to be able to pay artists appropriately for the work. So a lot of people want, for example, to stream our production of Prince Hamlet, which regularly on tour would cost about something like, I don't know, $45,000 to $50,000 per week to present. But then the offer for a stream is about $1,000 for a week. And so it's a big kind of ethical challenge for us. Do we present it? How do we present this work that doesn't undervalue the work and also compensates the artist appropriately? And if we're generating only $1,000 for the stream, it doesn't let us do that in a way that we feel is ethically right for the work that was put in. So right now there's a lot of conversation here around what's the real, how do you properly compensate a designer for streaming? How do you properly compensate an actor for that work? So big questions that we're still trying to figure out.
Great. Thank you. Ed Peck has a question on the chat. Ed, if you wanted to show yourself and unmute your mic.
Hi, it's Tracy Foster using Ed Peck's computer because mine crashed.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Thank you, everybody, for all of the information that's like waving through right now, and bear with me because I'm going to try to articulate this through lots of excitement and fear. The question that I attempted to write down and articulate is, how can we, so just to frame this, I'm the founder and artistic director of a disability cultural organization that has a Crip theater company within it in Saskatchewan. And we're still living within a climate in Saskatchewan where one of our three major funders does not recognize disability as a culture. So hopefully that can help frame the ecology relative to where we sit in the province. So what I'm curious about is if there's any insight or information that could help us support funders, institutions, and the two main theaters, the people that have a little more resourcing than we do, understand the viable threat of the interdependent artists that we are and company that we have, as well as the independent artists and companies that are in the province as well, from just dissolving or disappearing into the struggle to sustain ourselves through this, because it was very viable and real prior to the pandemic. So now there's that on top of it. And yeah, I guess the second part of it's really not all that relative. I can reach out. It's just, how do we help people understand what interdependent theater actually is within our province, but also, of course, beyond.
Anybody want to take that on?
I would say now is the time to bring people together to have a conversation about addressing inequities in arts funding and in the arts ecology. And, if they're not willing to listen, I think you need to figure out I think there needs to be, you could find a way to bring stakeholders to the table, bring the funders to the table, and have a real conversation about understanding what those systemic inequities have been and how to understand sort of how we're going to prioritize where efforts and energy need to go, how we've done that historically, and what the opportunity is now to potentially address those inequities and, support the people with the most need. So maybe it's worth engaging them in a conversation and, perhaps creating a values document or mutual understanding about this new context that we're in. And there's a lot of literature now, in particular, around systemic barriers that have to do with race and ability and gender and, and sexuality. So how do we have an honest conversation and bring people together around this moment where people are potentially listening in a different way than pre-COVID?
I might just add that there is a range on the spectrum of what we ask our colleagues to do, and it's, I really think that sometimes we're a bit, I don't know, all or nothing. When I hear that you're not receiving funding from 3 levels of government, I look at your colleagues around the room and wonder if you've asked them to write letters of support to that funder and say, and help use their power and their good standing with that funder and extend that to your work and to the work that you're doing. Or, we're not going to be in a place where necessarily shows are going to be in somebody's season in a kind of traditional subscription model for a while. So, maybe there is space. Maybe there's a rehearsal hall that you can safely go into it'd be really, great for that space to be used for a theater company, but it also would be great for you to have a safe space to work in for a little. I think sometimes we kind of jump to marriage. Like we forget about the dating steps along the way. And I really think that right now, with new people in the helm, with changes, with COVID, with this really strong conversation happening on the ground level in every community about how can we truly walk down the path of being an anti-racist organization, an anti-oppression organization, a truly equitable, diverse, and inclusive organization. What does that look like? And you might be able to put up your hand and say, I have some suggestions. I have a bit of intelligence here. you might want to partner with me as you walk down this path as an organization. So I feel like there's a moment here where, you know, knocking on the doors may have been very frustrating for a number of years, but I suspect right now some of those doors might be opening.
Great. Anita, did you want anything? Do you have anything to add?
I would say, I think just echoing what Camilla said, I think larger institutions are wanting to hear how they can be more inclusive. And, you know, we don't have the answers. We need smaller organizations to tell us the experience, to tell us what they need. And I think you'd be surprised. I think it was interesting. Camilla said, you know, you should engage your colleagues to appeal to arts councils, which is a really achievable thing. You know, you'd be surprised at how your colleagues want to help. And that's a really tangible way to put your voice forward as a arts institution, to say, these are issues in our, or opportunities in our province. And let's find the funding to support that, which is ultimately going to help the larger organizations as well.
Okay. I think that we have
just at Globe. I think we'd
yep.
like to sort of Tracy. Hi, hey Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
We also want to recognize that there has been some missteps in the past, Tracy, and we look forward to having that conversation about how we can move forward in a better way. And so we really look forward to having that conversation. And I know this summer was crazy for us to try to get together, but we've got Jennifer here now, so we
Day 3, everybody.
Yeah. Here, call me. Yeah.
Thank you. And just to clarify, since we're open again, the 3 funders in Regina, there's one of the 3 funders. 2 have really open to listening to conversations and moving things forward in a realistic way that they can do. It's not like we can say this is what's happening and the response is going to change things immediately. So there is movement, just so that if I framed it in a way that which there wasn't, there is. We're just still really there's a little, I don't know if it's not more or bigger oppression. There are different issues that tend towards a very conservative minded way of dealing with things, as well as harvesting really great resources from oppressed communities. And I think that we have to grow up together inside of that, all of us, not just the major funders or major players, but all of us. So thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Jennifer. We have one more question here, and I think that's about, I think the formal part of this conversation will end with that. But again, the room will still be open. And if our panelists want to stay, they can stay, and the chatting can still happen. So this is from Torian. Did I say that name right? Do you want to show your face and unmute your mic and ask your question?
Sure. Hi.
Great. Hi.
Let me just see how I worded it. Right. So what I'd like to hear anyone speak on, honestly, is how can Saskatchewan theaters radically participate in the most urgent issues of justice impacting this province and this country? Thinking of protests against police violence, land defenders being arrested, mass evictions during a pandemic, reopening schools with no protections during a pandemic, etc. How can we, I guess, and in relation to that, how can we economically reorganize our theater institutions to make space for the storytellers who need it, and offer tools to disrupt the status quo, even if it alienates many current subscribers and donors and sponsors? Yeah.
Anybody from the panel?
I'll take some portion of this. I would say that I wouldn't underestimate your donors and patrons and sponsors. I am constantly surprised at how concerned they are with social justice and with and how thoughtful. And so, you might get one or two letters, and but you'll have 100 people voting with their feet to support you in whatever you're enabling. I find theater goers are smart, thoughtful people. So I wouldn't be, and they're in this society right now, so they're with us. So I wouldn't be concerned about taking a stand or supporting causes or speaking out and seeing that as an alienation of audiences, because I think they expect us to be representing what's happening in society right now.
Reps.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I agree with Anita. And, in terms of your question about how, I think that you can look to examples. Right now, a very good friend of mine works at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where there are severe fires. And so a lot of people have lost their homes, and they are working around the clock to house people temporarily. They are taking food donations, and they're using their spaces to provide relief for those causes. And so I think if you scoured the net a bit, you would find examples of ways that people have done it. And then I would say just replicate it. Go to a theater and offer them, look, they did it, can we? There's a shortage of beds in the hospital. Can we turn the theater into a hospital ward for a week? If you come with the idea, it might be easier to respond to. I'm not sure if you work for the institution or not, or the spaces or not, but it sometimes helps to have an example, and there are a lot actually out there right now.
Camilla?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add that's helpful, but I would say that, most of even our boards, even our most conservative boards, one of the titillating pleasures pre-COVID of being on an arts board was that, there's something a bit dangerous about artists and about art, and we count on artistic communities to kind of lead the way towards a more pluralistic and inclusive society. And so I think we can't really be afraid of making space for those stories, and particularly in the time of COVID, this is a moment where I crave for the good monologists to give us sort of something meaty to read or digest or listen to on our podcasts about what's happening in the world. So I really encourage the artists who are watching on the live stream, but I encourage also the artistic leaders on the room to, maybe this is a time for some provocative baby commissions or big commissions. Maybe we need to be creating really exciting plays right now about the thorny issues of our time. We look so far back often. We look to Shakespeare, right? Who had, or to the classics of our time. Maybe we need to be leaning into those artistic impulses right now to create to create a theater response to this, a theatrical response, something. And for those of you who have venues, yes, it probably wasn't enough to just go and get the extra masks and drop them off at the food bank in March, or to, it is really a moment to say, how do we use our resources towards a better world?
Great, thank you. So it is 4:30, Mark. There is one more question in the chat. I don't know whether we want to kind of just go for it, or do we? And whoever can answer. This is from Jenica. Jenica, did I say that right? Can you show yourself and unmute your mic?
Her mic doesn't work.
Okay, so it's my interpretation again. So, question from Jenica. Thoughts from the panelists on creative team-led models as opposed to the dual executive approach, as well as set term limits. Thoughts?
I'm happy to jump in. I feel like Ravi and I will be on opposite ends of the spectrum here. And that's really what I was hoping for today, was for us to really wrestle it down. So I am team dual leadership. I am profoundly in the camp of these are organizations make better decisions with more people in the room, and this is a way to make sure there are two people running an organization who bring different perspectives and different complementary pieces to the table. I also think that when it's working, it's like all things. When it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's awful. But that dual-headed monster, it allows the organization to have the trump card of the art, but it also allows there to be a real sense of rigor around the financial and fiduciary responsibilities. So I've always worked under this model. I've always espoused this model. I currently am in this model. I am a huge fan of it. And anytime somebody calls me and says, what do you think about, the single-headed piece? Though I suspect, Jenica, you're actually asking about a kind of more consortium model potentially. But, anytime somebody, a board chair or somebody calls and says, let's go for one, or I say, I'm absolutely opposed. So I like more. I'm not sure how many more than two I like, but that's maybe a question for Ravi and Anita. Anita lived through the 4 artistic director model. She can tell you how much fun that was.
Go for it. Either Anita or Ravi. So
I'll jump in, Ravi, and then I'll give you the last word. We have a dual leadership model, artistic director and executive director. I think that multiple artistic leads, I really thought it could work. And I still think it can work. So we did a multiple, we had 3 artistic directors, and Anthony was the general director. And I think that what worked about that is that people were coming from different, we had Don Shipley, who was coming from a festival background, like international festival background, and Des McAnoff, who was Broadway guy, and Marty Meriden, who was a Canadian theater icon and so experienced. So it was really great to have all of these different voices. I think what didn't work about it was they weren't clear what each other was doing. Like they were all acting like the sole artistic director, but they really needed to be a team. So on paper, I really think it can work. And I still think it can work if the right people are there and they know it's very clear what their job is. But if it's kind of muddy and we're all going to kind of do this together and no one's going to have accountability, that is what I have seen hasn't worked so far. So that when no one has accountability and when something goes wrong, everybody does this thing, and that gets more pronounced when there's more people. But I still think that it can work.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's saying good things, and I agree a lot with Anita there. To disagree vehemently with Camilla. No, I'm kidding. I think the first question is, what does the organization need? And it's not one size fits all. The approach needs to be one size fits one, and you tailor the kind of leadership based on the needs of the organization, and also based on the needs of the team. I think that really what it comes down to also is the how and the processes that you need to actually have in place for people to be able to work together, to be able to be humble and listen to each other, and to actually collaborate. And I think it's absolutely vital that everyone understands their roles and their responsibilities. At YNAP, we have a very shared leadership model that is quite unique, and we're piloting an even new one. September to December, we've done a huge restructure, and we're in a piloting phase. And in January, I'm hoping to be able to create a presentation that we're hoping to share widely that is really rethinking what an arts company can look like and what shared leadership can look like. And a big guiding thing for us, you can Google this, is we're relying pretty heavily on what is called a RACI matrix, RACI. You can Google it. And basically RACI is responsibility, accountability, consulting, and information. And these are designated relationships within an organization of who is responsible for getting that thing done, who is ultimately accountable when things don't get done, where the buck stops, who needs to be consulted so that we make the best choices on this decision, and who just needs to be informed to let them know that we're going on. And those relationships are constantly changing depending on what we're working on, depending on who needs to make decisions. And we have a very creative way of kind of exploring that changing dynamic. And so I think with that is we're an organization of 10 full-time people. We're small enough that the chaos of that is tenable. I imagine for Camilla, that kind of flux is not healthy when you have a staff of over 100 people, let alone Anita, who has, like 5,000 people or something. You need a consistency and a reliability on how things work. And everyone needs to understand their role, and the how is the thing to put your finger on to figure out. And if people are open, if they're honest, if they're transparent, I believe you can make anything work. It's just the difficulty of actually being authentic, transparent, and honest. As I said, and I would say this and stand by it, Canadians aren't always that. Gauntlet thrown.
Yeah. But also, again, for me, I just don't understand why we have to choose. Obviously, one size does not fit all, right? And so if some companies really work in a more collaborative model, shared model, fantastic. And if some companies work with the two-headed monster, fantastic. I think we should have all kinds of artistic and administrative models. Actually, I don't think we have enough variety, actually.
And that's something we've been talking a lot around our table as well, is we're arts organizations. Our product is developed through collaboration. So why is there such a huge separation between the means of production outside the room and in the room? And absolutely, we need to understand that it is a business and it needs to maybe function in different ways. But why do we lose that sense of creativity and collaboration? Or maybe you don't lose it. I think that's the other thing to support Camilla. You don't necessarily lose the collaboration and the creativity in a two-person system either. It's just, again, it's more about the how and why you need it. And then do all the people inside know how to play? It's like a show.
Great. So I'm going to close the formal part of this kind of our panel, and we'll leave off with the one that really struck me was pandemic win by when Anita mentioned, because when we think of pandemic, we think of loss, we think of everything negative under the sun. But it was good to be reminded that in these times there are wins as well. And so with that in mind, I've been told through Tyler that there have been lots of comments about the creative pursuits and works that have been done here in Saskatchewan during the COVID times, that are innovative and inspiring. So I just want to acknowledge on the stream room side where we don't have access to that. I just wanted to give a shout out on that. So there are pandemic wins, absolutely. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark. You can now have control of the room back. So,
Nina, thank you for so beautifully stick-handling us through this complex conversation. Thank you so much. And to our panelists for all of the inspiring and challenging and encouraging words. We always learn through things like this, so we have much more in common than we do differently, despite all of our emphasis on regional differences at times. So thank you for this. For everyone who's in the room and on the stream, our hope is certainly, we knew this wasn't going to be enough time for this conversation. Our hope was that it would perhaps continue to help spark continued conversation. And I think SATPA will be looking at ways of bringing together our different producers and theaters of different sizes, models, and shapes to inspire each other and talk about how reinvention can look in our province. I want to thank my board, who I didn't write all their names down ahead of time, so now I'm not going to even try and name them all, because then I'll leave someone out and it'll be awkward for a week. So I just want to thank our SATPA board so much for spearheading this endeavor, for working to bring in these tremendous guest speakers. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, Nina. Stick around, folks, for as long as you like. I'm going to shut off the formal recording and all of that stuff, but all best wishes to everyone.